So yeah, the coach is always outside, right? They're never in the field. They never get in the middle of the field saying, "Oh, let me grab that ball and run." So in essence, in a business that's a no boss culture, you have the team, the people, you have the captain or the quarterback, the person who's making the play, and everybody's kind of looking up to. He's not the boss, but people are looking up to him. And then he's coordinated really well with the coach who's sitting on the sidelines, who's kind of telling him from a distance, "Hey, you know what? That was a bad play, and I can tell you why."
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we talk about a no boss culture. I'm not even crazy about the word boss, but I'm excited for this conversation today because I'm not crazy about the word boss, and we're going to talk about a no boss culture and what that means in terms of leadership, in terms of management, in terms of how people engage with each other. I think you'll find today's conversation with the CEO of Intellibus, Ed Watal, and I talk about a no boss culture. One of the things that isn't inside this, but I found out afterwards, he doesn't even refer to himself as a CEO. He refers to himself as a coach, because he truly believes his job is to coach others on their field of play and let them own the problems, let them own the work in front of them, and really lives that. We talk about how important values are to your organization, what that really means as you have a no boss culture, and really unpack some of the details of this that I think you'll find really interesting if you want to shift the way your company organizes. One of the things I love most about today's conversation is talking about the internal entrepreneur. I really do believe that across my business and really a lot of my clients. When people think like entrepreneurs inside the business, they are looking for challenges. They are looking to put out the fires before they become fires. And they are really looking to own the metrics as they drive things forward. That is what I'm looking for. And hopefully you'll find that interesting today. My name is Gene Hammett. I am an executive coach for more than 10 years. I also do leadership development with me and my team, and we help you grow your business by having extraordinary leaders. We really believe that leadership is the cornerstone of this. This means that people are communicating better, they're holding people accountable, they're living their values, they understand the mission and the vision of the companies, and they're able to lead people powerfully. Now, one of the tools we use is 7 dials. I'm kind of giving you a preview of some of those dials, but if you're curious about where you measure up and where you are on those dials, then all you have to do is go to genehammett.com and schedule a call today. It's called the Leadership Effectiveness Evaluation. Inside that is a customized and personalized approach to the 7 dials of leadership. And we will rank you, we will prioritize the next steps and help you create a plan of action. You may decide to hire us, you may not. Completely up to you, but it will be absolutely free if you mention that you heard it here on the podcast. Otherwise, it's $1,000. So just mention it and you get it absolutely for free. Just go to genehammett.com, schedule your call today. Now, here's the interview with Ed. Ed, how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast. We're going to talk about a no boss culture, what that really means, but tell us about your company, Intellibus.
Intellibus, a lot of people don't know, is just simply short for intelligent business platforms. So we kind of put a lens, everybody, when they talk about platforms, they think about technology, but really it's not about, and we live today in the world of artificial intelligence. So you think about, everybody's thinking about, oh, how do I make my technology intelligent? But it's really not about technology, it's about the people. So how do you make your business intelligent? That's sort of the lens that we have when we talk to businesses.
I love that. I'm a numbers person, being an engineer in my background. I know we talked a little bit about that. Have you created this is it a problem you had in previous world, or is it just something you saw a need out there to create a platform for intelligence?
So it's a great question. I'll touch upon a point that we talk about, and purely as you know, in marketing, you have to pick a word that nobody else is talking about, otherwise it's overused. So we position ourselves with a word called multiplicity. So that's the word we own when it comes to positioning and branding. In our customer's mind, if you're talking about multiplicity, you talk to Intellibus. And what is multiplicity really? It's kind of think about, we all know what duplication is. You have one thing and it's not, there's just one copy of it. So duplication can be good, because you need a backup. And there's bad duplication as well. When cancer cells multiply, it's not good. But in essence, if one cancer cell multiplied and just created 2, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when it tries to create multiple, 2, 3, or 4, And that's what happens. You end up buying more, cartons of milk than you need in your refrigerator, and you trash them. Or you're in a business, you end up buying more businesses. At some point, when you acquire a lot of companies, you have a lot of redundant software, a lot of redundant processes and technology. And that's the multiplicity problem. That's what we really help solve.
Ed, we're going to have a great conversation, not necessarily about the technology and your platforms, but about the people. You mentioned how it really is about people. No boss culture. What is that?
The shortest way to think about it is that you really have no boss. Now, that can be very unnerving for people because almost always we look for direction. We want to be taught, we want to know what's right from wrong. So we always look for direction. So it can be very challenging. But if you think about a sports team, there is no boss. I mean, you have a captain, someone who gives you direction, or a quarterback that defines the play. But when you're running with that ball in the field, there's no boss telling you what to do. You kind of decide where and how you want to run.
Now, I love the analogy, but how would you factor in there the coach of that team?
So yeah, the coach is always outside, right? They're never in the field. They never get in the middle of the field saying, "Oh, let me grab that ball and run." So in essence, in a business that's a no boss culture, you have the team, the people, you have the captain or the quarterback, the person who's making the play, and everybody's kind of looking up to. It's not the boss, but people are looking up to him. And then he's coordinated really well with the coach who's sitting on the sidelines, who's kind of telling him from a distance, "Hey, you know what? That was a bad play. And I can tell you why."
I use that analogy sometimes in my coaching, and sometimes CEOs are the coach. Sometimes it's someone else on the team that's coaching a specific team. And then there's sometimes the coach actually moves up to the owner's box and they're no longer on this field of play, but they are overseeing some things behind the scenes. But they've really given over a lot of that leadership to the coach. Is that kind of similar to what you're talking about here, or is it different in your world?
Oh, that's exactly it. And so really there's the third role that you touched upon, which is what we call the manager. We call it the owner. The idea of owner we generally don't use because we expect everyone to be an owner. We kind of think of you own the problem. That's really what we're here to do, right? You're trying to solve a problem. And then so the manager is really the person sitting in the owner's box who's sort of from a distance. It's not so involved in the game. It's not going to lose his sleep maybe he will, but not expected to lose his sleep if you lose a game, because they're trying to see, overall, how do you perform? How do I do for the season? How do I do for the quarter or the year when it comes to the business? Not looking at every play and getting bogged down.
Now, Ed just talked about ownership. Now, this is a topic that I have talked about from stages. I've talked about it on the podcast before, and I want to share this with you. When you get people to feel like an owner of a problem that's inside their team, their identity shifts. It's not just about doing the work and, okay, it's done. Their identity connects to, I'm the person who understands the problem, solves the problem, and is able to get the results that are desired. And that identity is the key, the feeling of ownership, that you associate yourself with doing the thing. Whereas people that are just taking responsibility for things or just have it as a part of their job description, they do it out of, responsibility, which isn't the same thing. Keep that in mind as you are talking and leading people. You want them to feel a sense of identity around the work that they do. And that inspires a sense of ownership that both of you are looking to experience. Back to Ed. One of the things that I do with these podcasts and with my work is I really go deep into understanding fast growth companies. There's a level of chaos that comes with wanting to grow fast. And some of the companies are just doubling. Like just doubling every year is a little bit of a chaos for many companies, especially when you get to be, 10 million and 20 million and 40 million. And a lot of time it comes up is this concept of ownership. How do you guys use it when you said we expect everyone to be an owner?
So that's a great question. We use the term internal entrepreneurship, and it's a little nuanced. It ties into some of the other principles that we have, in terms of the behaviors and culture that we inculcate and tied to a core set of values within the company. And it's really about inculcating that sense of entrepreneurship, as in owning the problem, not necessarily owning the software. So often, in the software world, we spend a lot of time software engineering, and developers start to own the software. So then there's this territory. I wrote this software, and this is my software, and it's so cool. And then you're sort of dispassionate about the software, but you're really trying to solve the problem. And so the hardest thing, and I've been an engineer, for decades in my life, where the hardest thing was to throw away all the work that you did before, because you knew what you did was kind of old, outdated, it's garbage now, and you could do it much better with the new tools that you have, because tools change.
Well, that's one perspective for sure of ownership, about owning the problem. I want to go back to the no boss culture. Did you learn this somewhere? Because it's not necessarily the way most businesses run.
So I learned this the hard way. I mean, the reason I started my own business was because I didn't really like to be bossed around. And if you work in large enterprises, you do get bossed around. You kind of get into this machine, and you're a cog in the wheel in a much bigger machine. So of course, machines are valuable, because if there was no machines, we couldn't get anything done. But I wanted to work or build a machine which would be different. And that was the real genesis of the no boss culture. So it's like, okay, yeah, there's no choice not to have a large enterprise, because you need to build products, and building an iPhone is going to take more than me, right? If you wanted to build the next best thing beyond the iPhone, how would you do it? You need a big, vast machinery.
And the no boss culture is different from what traditionally people say. How do you explain to someone how it's truly different so that they understand it if they were considering doing something like this for their company?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage every company on earth to do this, because there's no other culture anybody would need. I mean, I think the first question is, should you do it for your company? And if you're considering setting up no boss culture for your company, ask yourself. Maybe don't even ask yourself. Just go around asking people in your company, do you love it? Do you hate it? You're probably going to get more hits than love. And no matter what company you are, because almost everybody hates something about the company. And maybe they won't tell you because you're the boss. So maybe have someone else do it for you. And that's why 360 appraisals are important. So I think the first thing is to assess whether it's right for you. And if you feel it's right for you, and maybe it's not, so then it's really about, how do you determine how to implement this? And then there's a series of steps to follow. Of course, you can't implement a culture that doesn't stick to your core values. So at the essence, it will go back to what core values do you have? What behaviors do you want people to have? And how does that all tie together?
I do want to ask you about the core values, because it's a theme that comes up quite often in these conversations and fast growth. But I'm also, and I'm not trying to take a counter approach here, but I want to understand it. Google ran a study one time about no managers, and they just wanted to put smart people onto teams and really remove that management layer. And it failed miserably. I don't know if you know much about the study, but why do you think, when you hear that it failed, because this manager that was coordinating things and prioritizing things didn't work when they pulled it out of their teams?
So actually, that's a great example. I'm not entirely intimately familiar, but certainly now that you've told me, I kind of get a sense of what that might be. I would say a few things to consider. At the end of the day, any enterprise organization or business you're trying to run is really a group of people. And of course, resources, and the other resources, you have physical objects and things, tools, software, hardware, time, and money. So if you think about it, time is the only commodity that's irreplaceable, right? That's something, if you lose every minute, you can't get it back. Money, if you lose it, you give an example of bouncing back and resilience, you can find it. You can always get money back. And physical things and tools, you can lose them. You can buy the new screwdriver or the new tool. But the thing that's hardest to ever get back is people. So if you think about what's the most critical thing, first, acquiring the people that you want to be working with, you have to feel good. You have to get up in the morning and feel like, I want to go meet that guy. Not like, oh, I hate that guy, but I still have to go out and work with him. Like, there's this thing you'll hear from lots of billionaires and successful people like Jeff Bezos, who'll say, oh, disagree and commit, right? So there's like, yeah, I don't even agree with you. So what's going on, right? So maybe you have to peel that onion a little deeper and say, what's the disagreement all about? And maybe that's something the other person doesn't understand or you don't understand. So I think one has to delve deeper. And sometimes it's just really about core values.
Now, Ed just mentioned time. He didn't talk about it much, but yes, we can't get back time. We know that we can't get back our time. We can't get back the time for employees. And so here's what I'd love for you to do. I'd love for you to think about how you're using your time. As a CEO, it evolves. If you have not gone through a time audit, if you have not really looked at your calendar and saying, why do I go to these meetings, and really decided to let go of certain things, you're not evolving at the pace at which your company either is evolving at or you want it to evolve at. And that may be the reason. You may be the bottleneck of this company. So think about how you're using your time and be willing to have conversations with those around you about their time, about how they take it to that next level. What do they need to stop doing? What do they need to start doing? What do they need to keep doing? Simple framework for you as you look at your time and you start to level up. You should do it every quarter, sometimes even more often if you're going through a drastic amount of change. Back to Ed. When you talk about managers and you relate them to the coach aspect of this, like there's maybe a team lead on the field of play, and they all know their assignments. They are taking ownership of those roles, the way I kind of see it. And I'm picturing football right now because it's just easier for me than other plays. But it's true that the manager isn't typically doing the work, right? They're not actually making the sales call. Sometimes they are supporting them in different ways. But what would we see across your organization in terms of accountability in this no boss culture?
So that's a great question. I think we talk about this quite a lot because the question of accountability almost always comes in large organizations, because you want to be accountable, and especially organizations that are public listed, because you're accountable to the shareholders of the company. But when you're a private company, the accountability is kind of limited to the people in-house in some sense, right? Let's say you're a people-owned company and you're an employee-owned company, then you have accountability to yourself. So at the very root of it is, again, back to the question of values. So accountability really is about how clearly do you stick to your values and your behavior within the organization.
So we came back to values again. I knew we'd get here somehow. The values, if you looked across all of the interviews I've done, over 500 with people just like you that have been on the Inc. list, they will talk about being a values-driven company. They will talk about living their values. They will talk about how values are ingrained and whatnot. When you are out there engaging with your client, your employees, your team members, how are you living the values that you've been talking about today?
That's a great question. Thanks for that. So I think there's certain key behaviors that you can bring that to bear with. And again, it goes back to, I also talk about this topic, actually just recently, I talked about this topic about guardrails. So guardrails are important, but before I go there, I'll talk to you about some key behaviors that we think about. So, and this is going to be a bit of a longer answer, so brace yourself. So the first piece of it is really about certain method of inquiries that we encourage people to have. For example, you walk in a room, often you'll hear people say, "Oh, why is this happening? Oh, why did that problem happen?" The clients say that, and you'd have people say that. And every time someone says, "Why is this happening?" we just gently smile, we give them a nudge, and we say, "Hey, I think what you're really trying to say is, how can we fix this?" And then everybody knows that, oh, we have the culture of how, not why. And that's very core to our culture. There's a video on YouTube, I encourage people to watch. It says, ask how, not why. And there's a deeper method of inquiry there. And if you watch the video, you'll see, why that's relevant, or rather, how that's relevant. The other behavior that we try to encourage is building trust, because trust is the very root of all relationships. And trust with yourself, as in knowing that you will adhere to the values. Trust in the team, that the team will provide you the guardrail that we just give the example of, that you'll stick to your core values. And so it's really habits and guardrails. And then building trust through communication, which is the crux of it. So for example, if someone's running late, even if you're running like a minute late to your meeting, are you making the extra effort to message out? Now, sometimes it's not practically possible. For example, my calendar is often triple booked. And so it's just, and I'm leaving a meeting, I have to send 3 messages out. So obviously you need care. So we have the culture of care. Care is a person within the organization. Typically people call it HR, but we use the term care. It's someone who's there to make sure that you get through your day. So bringing in the idea of care, the idea of trust, asking how, not why, and then the sense of follow through to get it done and polished. Often, you'll receive a client deliverable or a document that's, the font's off. Oh, it's not buttoned up. So when we ship something to a client, it's buttoned up. It's all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. Again, it's about really inculcating these simple behaviors, if you will.
Now, Ed's been talking about values here, and I just wanted to jump in. Too many people will say that they understand their values and they're living their values, but they're really not. In fact, I was at a conference once keynoting next to Brene Brown, and Brene Brown said something that I had never heard anyone say. This was about 5 years ago. She asked the audience, have you operationalized your values? Meaning, have you made them a part of your day-to-day living, everything that you do? And only about 5 people raised their hand. And I looked back there and I saw a room of 1,000 people, 5 people raised their hand. And I took notice and I found those people, and I was like, they all came from the same company, and they all say that they've operationalized their values. They live them. what would your people say? Would you say that they're operationalized, that you truly are having them optimized, and they're part of our day to day? We hire people, we lead people, we fire people. There's 12 touch points of values. I'm wondering where you are with that. Back to Ed. We're wrapping up today, Ed, talking about a no boss culture. Is there a different hiring process or way that you're assessing whether someone will work in a no boss culture?
So that's a interesting thought. I don't know how different it is, but surely we have our own unique hiring process. We call it GQ, which stands for Genius Quotient. In essence, you go through more than an interview process. You take a series of tests, which are objective in nature, multiple choice, both technology and non-technical. And it's metrics driven. We use some algorithms as well to sort of help us sort out the better responses from the not so great responses. And incorporating that also creates a sort of a barrier, if you will. So people who are more attuned to the no boss culture are more likely to be willing to be in that Navy SEAL mindset, meaning they're willing to persevere. They have the resilience. So they will actually be willing, even after, and I'll give an example. So we had an architect who's got 20 years of experience. Typically, if you call an architect with 20 years of experience, they're going to be like, nah, I'm not taking tests. Too old for that. But then person who's willing to take tests after 20 years of experience for 8 hours online, they're a good fit for the no boss culture.
And I really appreciate you sharing these insights with us and sharing what makes your company kind of work and unique. Being on the Inc. list at this level takes a lot of, powerful leadership. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing that with us.
Oh, thank you. Really pleasure to be here.
Wow, what a great interview. I love talking with people that think differently about leadership, and this no boss culture, I think, is a very unique approach to this, and it really codifies how he believes managers and CEOs and leaders are engaging with people in their teams, and the no boss effect not only helps your company grow, but it helps you really create the kind of business that scales and manages itself. And that is what a lot of my clients are looking for. So curious about how we help people through executive coaching and leadership development. Just schedule a call today. Just go to genehammett.com, schedule a call. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, think of courage. We'll see you next time.